Hello, this is Patrick from Royas. Today I'm going to teach you how to make a patrolling enemy in Godot. As you can see, I've got the rigid body for the enemy on the first layer with a mask of 1 and 2, and then a collision polygon 2D and an animation sprite 2D. Then I've got a tile map on collision layer 2 with a collision mask of 1. Alright, let's get started on the code for the enemy. First thing we're going to do is do some export variables. The first one is going to be for the speed of the character, and we'll set that to 100F, and then we'll make another one, and that'll control the X offset. So this will be for the raycast that we point down at the ground to see in front of them if they're over the edge. Then we'll make another one for the raycast distance, and we'll set that to 37. Then we will make another export variable for the direction that the character is facing. So 1 will be going to the right, and -1 will be going to the left. Then we'll make another export variable for the collision polygon 2D, and we'll call that collider. That way we will be able to flip that when we want the character to rotate. Now we'll make a function to do exactly that, where we'll take the collider, we'll scale it on the X with the direction that they are going to be facing, and that'll flip the sprite around and the collider as well. And then we'll call flip on start so that it's going to be facing the correct direction. Now we'll override the physics process. In here, we're just going to set the linear velocity to be the speed multiplied by the direction on the X axis. That way the character will just be going in the direction that we want them to. And then we'll set the linear velocity on the Y to be the linear velocity on the Y, so they'll continue falling if they are already falling, or whatever we want them to be doing there. Now we're going to go over into a process and get the physics direct space 2D and store that in a variable we'll call space. We'll do that by getWorld2D and then direct space state. Next, we're going to go and make a vector2 called forward_dir, which will be the position, and then we'll set the X on that to be the raycast distance multiplied by the direction, so that it'll be pointing, the raycast will be pointing out in front of the character in the direction that we want them to be facing. And then after this, we'll start making a physics ray query parameter 2D, and we'll call that forward query. And then we'll set that equal to physics ray query parameter 2D.create, and then we'll give it the character's position, and then we'll give it the forward direction, which will be the area that it points to, and then we'll give it a value of 2 in the third parameter. This will set it to only collide with the collision layer 2, so that it will avoid the characters, and it'll just collide with the tile map. Now we're going to make two vectors that sit in front of the character and point downwards so that we can do another physics ray query that's pointing downwards to look at the floor. We'll now add the X offset multiplied by the direction to the downward start pauses X so that it'll sit in front of the character when it's pointing at the floor. Next we'll make a vector2 called downward_dir that will set equal to the downward start position, and then we'll add the raycast distance to the Y so that it'll point directly down in front of the character. And that way, if it isn't colliding with the ground, the enemy will know that it needs to turn around. Next, we'll copy this forward query line and change out the parameters to downward start pause and downward_dir, leaving the number 2 the same, because we still want to collide with the tile map to see if we are over the edge. And then we will just rename this forward query to downward query. Now, in order to run those raycast queries we just made, we need to make a couple of Godot dictionaries and then set those equal to space.intersectRay, and then we'll pass in the forward query and the downward query. And then those results variables that we just made will let us know if we've hit anything or not. Now we need to check to see if the forward results have a count of greater than 0, which would mean that the raycast has hit the tile map in front of the enemy and it needs to turn around. Or the downward results count is less than or equal to 0, which would mean the character has no tile map in front of it and it's about to walk off a ledge. So if either of these conditions are true, we'll want to change the direction so that the character turns around, and then we'll want to flip the sprite and the collider. The final thing we need to do is go to the enemy scene and then assign the collider to the export variable. Then all the enemies will be turning around whenever they hit a wall or come to a ledge. Let's run it and see it in action. As you can see, the enemies are running into a wall or coming to a ledge, and they are turning around by themselves. If we want them to start going left instead of right, all we have to do is change direction to -1 instead of 1.